When DNA Lied, the case that broke forensics, Part 2. The state of Virginia launched an internal review, but it was quiet, almost hidden. Files went missing, servers went offline for maintenance, and technicians were instructed not to speak to the press. The word contamination was never used. They called it a minor database discrepancy. Behind bars, Darius Reed learned about it from a late-night news broadcast. He watched a single sentence scroll across the bottom of the screen. Forensic inquiry opened into state DNA software error. For the first time in 6 years, he felt something close to hope, and something far colder. If the science was wrong, then the people who swore by it had chosen to stay blind. Ellen Meyer's appeal gained traction when another conviction collapsed in Richmond. The same software, the same calibration error, and the same supplier that had provided testing kits statewide. Reporters began to ask whether an entire decade of perfect DNA matches could be trusted. In Haven County, the sheriff called a press conference to defend his department. "Our evidence is sound," he said. "Our labs are certified and justice was served." Cameras flashed, the crowd cheered, and no one noticed the intern who started it all, standing at the back shaking. Her name was Melissa Chan. She was 24 and about to lose her job. The morning after the press conference, her security badge stopped working. Her computer account was erased. Within days, her lease was terminated. She had become the system's first ghost. Melissa took the last of her savings and met with Ellen Meyer in a diner off Interstate 64. She slid a USB drive across the table. Copies of emails, internal memos, and deleted evidence logs. One of them carried a header that read, "Do not retest. Source sample compromised." The date was 2 weeks before Darius Reed's trial. When Ellen filed that document, the court finally agreed to an evidentiary hearing. The lab's director resigned the next morning. Suddenly, every agency that once praised DNA as infallible was scrambling to prove it still was. But in the shadows of bureaucracy, time is another prison. Darius had already served nearly 7 years. He had lost his job, his parents, and most of his sanity. The first time he was brought to court in shackles, reporters shouted questions about forensic fraud. He didn't answer. He just stared at the floor, lips moving to a rhythm only he could hear. Experts testified for weeks. They spoke about contamination, coding errors, and chain of custody gaps. The jury was replaced by silence. This was not a new trial but a hearing before a judge who'd once declared that DNA evidence transcends doubt. When the results of the independent audit were read, the room went still. Out of 317 cases tested from the same lab, 11 showed evidence of corrupted genetic profiles. 3 could not be replicated at all. The judge ordered Darius Reed released pending review. The headlines called it a victory for science. Darius called it something else. Freedom without truth. He walked out of prison to flashing lights and microphones. Reporters asked if he would sue the state. He said nothing. That night he vanished into the city, and by morning no one knew where he'd gone. Melissa Chan tried to find him. She left voicemails, letters, a single message on an online forum used by exonerated inmates. "You were right to confess. The lie wasn't yours." The post was never answered. A year later, the Haven County lab reopened under a new name. The same machines, freshly calibrated, gleamed under fluorescent lights. On the wall hung a framed certificate, ISO 9001 Quality Management Certified. Ellen Meyer kept working cases, but she stopped calling DNA the truth. In an interview she said, "Evidence is only as honest as the hands that handle it." Melissa left for another state, changed careers, and never spoke publicly again. Some said she was blacklisted. Others said she simply got tired of being right too soon. As for Darius Reed, his file sits in the state archives stamped, vacated by court order. The official record shows no address, no forwarding contact, no death certificate. Only one note added later in a different hand. Subject declined compensation. No one knows what that means. When DNA first entered the courtroom, it was supposed to end doubt forever. It did the opposite. For every answer it gave, it opened a new question. How much faith can a society place in machines built by people who can lie, forget, or fear the truth? In Haven County, they still teach the case at the academy. They call it the Reed anomaly. Trainees nod, take notes, and move on. But every so often, a technician scanning a barcode pauses just for a second before pressing enter. Because once the data lied. And when it did, everything built on it began to fall.